Book 1, The Blazing Ronin, Wandering Blades. Chapter 20, The Orphan's Unexpected Heritage. Akira stood impassively before the towering obsidian monoliths, his mind still reeling from the revelations that had unfolded over the past few days. The inevitability of the Defiler's return, the ancient primordial evil whose insatiable hunger threatened to unmake all of creation. The Ronin's piercing emerald gaze swept over his gathered vanguard, Kaya, her expression hardened with determination despite the undercurrent of trepidation thrumming through her. Kozue, the towering crimson-armored Ravager seeming to swell with anticipation. Masaru, the grizzled warrior regarding Akira with his usual inscrutable expression. And finally, Hana, the lithe kunoichi assassin studying the Ronin with narrowed eyes, her entire body tense beneath her form-fitting bodysuit. Akira opened his mouth to address them, to lay bare the path of spiritual rebirth and transcendence that had been offered to them all. The chance to undergo the same transformation he had, to be unmade and reforged in the fires of oblivion as living embodiments of the Old One's limitless power. It was the only way, the Ronin had come to realize. If he and his warriors were to have any hope of combating the Defiler's return, of cutting through that ancient primordial evil's insatiable hunger, then they would need abilities far beyond those of mere mortals. But before Akira could give voice to the revelations burning within him, a strange presence seemed to materialize beside the gathered vanguard. The Ronin tensed, his katana angling forward as he turned to face the potential threat. A small figure emerged from the tree-line, cloaked and cowled in the unmistakable garb of a Shinto monk. Akira's eyes narrowed as he studied the newcomer warily, able to make out nothing but the barest hints of their features beneath the deep shadows of their hood. "You are trespassing on sacred ground, stranger," the Ronin stated, his deep voice resonating with quiet intensity. "This is the path of the Emerald Trail, the means for the Old One's chosen warriors to decipher the ancient prophecies. If you have no business here, I would suggest leaving immediately." The cloaked figure seemed to consider Akira's words for a moment before giving a slight shake of their head. When they spoke, it was with a high, rasping voice that sent a shiver of unease down the Ronin's spine. "I am afraid I cannot do that, Blazing Ronin," the monk stated, their words carrying a strange reverberating quality. "For my business here is of great importance to you and your warriors. Especially the youngest one among you." Akira's eyes narrowed further as the cowled figure extended one withered hand, gesturing towards the slight form of Takeshi. The young orphan boy tensed, seeming to shrink in on himself slightly as all eyes turned towards him. "Me," he murmured, his high voice tinged with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity. "What could you possibly have to do with me, old one? I'm just a simple orphan who pledged my sword to the Ronin's cause." The cloaked monk regarded Takeshi for a long moment before giving a dry, rasping chuckle that set Akira's teeth on edge. "Is that what you believe, child? That you are nothing more than a nameless waif, doomed to wander these lands without purpose or destiny?" The withered figure shook their head slowly, an inscrutable expression playing across what little of their features could be seen. "You could not be more wrong, young one. For you carry a great legacy within your veins, one that could potentially alter the course of this entire conflict." A shocked silence fell over the clearing as the weight of the monk's proclamation seemed to linger in the air like a suffocating miasma. Akira studied the cowled figure warily, his markings flaring briefly with ethereal energy as he leveled his piercing emerald stare at them. "You speak in riddles and implications, stranger," the Ronin stated, his deep voice laced with quiet menace. "If you have something of importance to share regarding my student, then I would suggest making it plain. We do not have time for more deceptions or falsehoods." The cloaked monk regarded Akira for a moment before giving a slight nod of acknowledgement. With a sweeping gesture, they conjured a small leather pouch that they tossed lightly towards Takeshi. The young orphan caught it easily, giving the withered figure a questioning look as he weighed the parcel in his palm. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the monk spoke once more in that same rasping tone. "Within that pouch are the seeds of your destiny, child. The means to unlock the truth of your bloodline and embrace your role as the last scion of the Kozue clan. A stunned silence fell over the clearing once more as the weight of the figure's words seemed to hang in the air. Takeshi could only stare at the leather pouch, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and uncertainty. Finally, the young orphan found his voice, his high tones laced with trepidation. The Kozue clan? But they were one of the most powerful samurai families in these lands before the Emerald Cataclysm. Renowned for their incredible warriors and unbreakable honor. Takeshi trailed off, his expression becoming one of stunned disbelief as the implications of the monk's words slowly began to sink in. You cannot possibly be implying that I am the last surviving heir to their bloodline? It's not possible, I'm just a nameless orphan who witnessed his family being slaughtered before his eyes. The withered figure cut him off, their rasping voice taking on a strange intensity. A young boy who can still hear their anguished screams echoing through the night, can still smell the acrid scent of their ashes on the evening winds. Takeshi's eyes went wide, his entire body seeming to tremble as the monk's words struck an unmistakable chord deep within him. Akira studied the young orphan carefully, realizing that this was the first time he had ever heard his student speak of the tragedy that drove him to walk the path of the Blazing Ronin. How could you possibly know about that night? Takeshi asked in a trembling voice. I've never spoken of it to anyone, not since pledging my sword to the Ronin's cause. The cowled monk regarded the young orphan for a long moment before giving a slight nod. Because I was there that fateful night, child. An unseen witness to the atrocities that befell your clan at the hands of Ito's elite assassins. The withered figure waved their hand once more, conjuring a series of archaic runes that hung shimmering in the air before them. Akira's markings flared brilliantly in response, his entire being resonating with the ancient energies in a way he could not fully comprehend. The Kozue clan was not simply a powerful samurai family, the monk continued, their rasping voice taking on a strange reverberating quality. They were the sworn protectors of an ancient celestial truth, one passed down through countless generations. The runes rapidly shifted and reformed, coalescing into a series of ornate archways and winding paths that Akira recognized instantly. It was the Emerald Trail, the means to decipher the Old One's prophecies about the inevitability of the Defiler's return. For you see, the Kozue were not simply skilled warriors, young Takeshi, the withered figure stated, their words carrying an unmistakable weight. They were celestial guardians, imbued with the Old One's infinite truth and sworn to protect the path of the Emerald Trail at all costs. Takeshi could only stare at the shimmering rune projections in stunned silence, his mind struggling to process the enormity of the monk's revelation. Akira studied his student carefully, watching as a series of emotions played across the young orphan's features. Shock, uncertainty, and finally a burning determination as the implications of his bloodline slowly began to sink in. The Ronin's markings flared ever brighter, pulsing in sync with the runes as that same power and significance washed over him. You are saying that I am the last surviving heir to a celestial clan? Takeshi asked at last, his high voice tinged with quiet intensity. One tasked with protecting the infinite truth of the Old Ones from him. The young orphan's eyes hardened as he leveled his stare at the withered monk, his next words carrying the unmistakable weight of conviction. From Lord Ito and the ancient evils he has allied himself with? The same ones that slaughtered my family all those years ago when they tried to prevent the Defiler's return. The cowled figure gave a solemn nod of confirmation, their expression becoming inscrutable once more. Indeed, child. The path you and the Blazing Ronin now tread is one your ancestors walked for thousands of years. Combating the primordial forces of chaos and oblivion, preserving the infinite truth of creation from those who would seek to corrupt or unmake it entirely. The monk's eyes seemed to blaze from within the shadows of their deep hood as they leveled their intense stare at Takeshi. And now, that sacred duty falls to you, young Takeshi. You are the last surviving scion of the Kozue bloodline, the final celestial guardian tasked with walking the Emerald Trail and deciphering the means to stop the defiler before it can unmake all of creation. A heavy silence fell over the clearing as the weight of the withered figure's proclamation seemed to linger in the air like a suffocating miasma. Akira could only watch as a series of emotions played across his student's features once more. Shock, uncertainty, and finally a burning resolve as Takeshi straightened, squaring his shoulders as he leveled his intense stare at the Ronin. The young orphan's markings flared brilliantly, pulsing in sync with the rune projections as his voice rang out with quiet conviction. "Then I will not fail in this sacred duty, my master," he stated, his high voice resonating with power. "If I am truly the last of the celestial guardians, imbued with the Old One's infinite truth, then I will walk the path of the Emerald Trail to its inevitable conclusion." Takeshi slowly opened a leather pouch, revealing a small ornate key that seemed to shimmer with an inner power. The young warrior extended his hand, allowing the archaic runes to coalesce around the key in a series of intricate symbols and patterns. "I will decipher the means to reseal the celestial archways and halt the defiler's return," Takeshi continued, his markings burning ever brighter. "No matter the sacrifices required, no matter how arduous the path ahead may be." The orphan's eyes blazed with intensity as he leveled his stare at Akira, his next words carrying the unmistakable weight of destiny. "This is my birthright, my sacred calling as the last scion of the Kazuki clan. And with your guidance, Blazing Ronin, I will honor my ancestors by cutting through the fires of oblivion itself and restoring balance to these realms." Akira could only regard his student in stunned silence, feeling a strange swelling of emotion tightening his chest. He had always sensed a deeper purpose burning within Takeshi, an intensity and hunger for redemption that had first drawn the Ronin to take the orphan under his wing. But to learn that the young warrior was the last surviving heir to a celestial clan, one tasked with protecting the infinite truth of creation itself? It was unfathomable, overwhelming in its implications. And yet, the Ronin could not deny the truth blazing in Takeshi's eyes, the sheer intensity of his convictions. His student had embraced his newfound heritage, his sacred calling as the final celestial guardian with every fiber of his being. Slowly, reverently, Akira extended his hand and gripped the young warrior's shoulder, causing Takeshi to look up with shining eyes. "Then we will walk that path together, my student," the Ronin intoned, his deep voice resonating with quiet power. "The road ahead will be fraught with more challenges and revelations than we could possibly fathom. But I have faith that you will persevere, that your spirit will burn brighter than any who have come before you." Akira's emerald gaze seemed to blaze with intensity as he leveled it at Takeshi, his next words carrying the unmistakable weight of destiny. "For you are far more than a simple warrior now, Takeshi of the Kazuki clan. You are the living embodiment of the Old One's infinite truth, a force of light and order powerful enough to cut through the coming oblivion and restore balance to these realms." The young warrior's eyes shone with a mixture of awe and determination as he gave a solemn nod of acceptance. Akira regarded his student for one final moment before rising and turning to face the rest of the vanguard. "Take heart, my friends," the Ronin called out, his deep voice resonating through the clearing. "For our path has become clear, our purpose sharpened by the revelations that have unfolded here." Akira leveled his piercing emerald stare at each of his warriors in turn, his markings flaring brilliantly as his voice rang out with quiet intensity. "We are to be the Old One's greatest champions in this realm. The living instruments of their limitless power, unstoppable forces of light and order capable of cutting through the defiler's insatiable hunger like a blazing emerald star." The Ronin slowly drew his katana, the brilliant jade blade seeming to shimmer with ethereal energy as he angled it towards the heavens. "No more shall we be bound by the limits of this existence, shackled by our mortal forms and finite abilities. For we will all undergo the same spiritual transcendence, allowing our shells to be unmade and reforged in the fires of oblivion itself." Akira's emerald gaze burned with the intensity of a sun-going supernova as it swept over the gathered vanguard, his voice resonating with the unmistakable weight of destiny. "On the morrow, we will set forth upon the path of the Emerald Trail. We will walk through the crucible, embrace the infinite truth of creation and emerge on the other side remade as living embodiments of the Old One's limitless power. The Ronin leveled his blazing katana at the shimmering rune projections, his next words seeming to resonate through their very beings. This is our sacred calling, my warriors. The path we were all destined to walk from the moment the Old Ones first granted us a spark of their infinite truth. We are to be the light that cuts through the coming oblivion, powerful enough to combat the defiler's return and restore balance before it is too late. A heavy silence fell over the clearing as Akira's words seemed to linger in the air like a suffocating miasma. He could see the awe, the uncertainty rippling through each of his companions as the true gravity of his proclamation slowly began to sink in. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Kozue found his voice. The towering crimson-armored Ravager leveled his intense stare at the Ronin from within his fearsome mask. You lead us along a path fraught with incredible dangers, Blazing Ronin, the giant rumbled, his deep voice tinged with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Powers and abilities far beyond what any mortal warrior could begin to comprehend. Are you certain this, spiritual transcendence is one we should be embracing? Akira held the Ravager's gaze for a long moment before giving a solemn nod of confirmation. I am more certain of this path than I have been of anything in my life, Kozue, the Ronin stated, his deep voice resonating with quiet conviction. The visions, the infinite truth that has been laid bare before me, it is all leading to one inevitability. Akira's markings flared ever brighter as he leveled his stare at each of his warriors in turn, his next words carrying the unmistakable weight of destiny. If we are to have any hope of combating the defiler's return, of cutting through that ancient primordial evil's insatiable hunger, then we must undergo this spiritual transcendence and rebirth. We must shed the limits of our mortal forms and be reforged as living embodiments of the Old One's limitless power.